So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julia Roessger, and during my master thesis, I have applied a regulation-based classification system on MPAs, which belong to the OSPAR MPA network. And let's start right away with the introduction. So marine ecosystems face severe anthropogenic stressors, such as declining biodiversity and habitat loss, pollution, increasing CO2 emissions with accelerating impacts, and also overfishing, as 34% of global fish stocks are overexploited. Human population rely on goods and services provided by the marine ecosystems, and this all shows the strong need for effective conservation of the marine environment. Marine protected areas, also called MPAs, can be an effective tool for marine conservation. Member states of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity have agreed to protect 10% of the global ocean surface by 2020 through IG Target 11. And in order to reach this target, the global MPA area cover has more than doubled since 2010. And the knowledge that MPAs can be a marine conservation tool is mostly based on fully protected areas where extractive uses are prohibited. And they show the greatest ecological benefit and are considered the most effective tool to protect marine ecosystem. But most established MPAs are partially protected. They can also be effective, but their ecological benefit is significantly lower compared to fully protected areas. And on a global level, 94% of MPAs allow fishing activity, and 59% of MPAs in EU waters are commercially trawled with higher trawling intensity inside the MPA than outside. And this all makes the term MPA controversial, and it seems that quantity is the more common rule rather than quality. A regulation-based classification system, which is also called RBCS, assesses MPA protection levels and classifies them according to the impact of their allowed uses and activities. And this enables, in fact, a more holistic view of the expected conservation, also considered as an indicator for MPA performance. European Regional Sea Convention have played a major role in establishing MPAs on a cross-boundary level. And one of the European Regional Sea Convention is the Convention for the Protection of the Marine and Northeast Atlantic, also called the OSPAR Convention. And it aims to establish an MPA network of well-managed and ecological coherent MPAs. And as the Northeast Atlantic represents a global fishing hotspot where 22% of the stocks were fished within unsustainable levels in 2017, there is a strong need for effective protection, especially in that area. And therefore, the major aim of our study is to assess the regulation-based protection levels and their potential implication for the OSPAR MPA network. And to classify MPAs with the regulation-based classification system, I have firstly extracted all available regulation data of the OSPAR MPA database. And to fill the gaps of the missing regulation data, I have also conducted a survey. And this survey was sent to all contracting parties, to the 12, for all 493 MPAs. And thirdly, regulation data for all 13 OSPAR MPAs was received through a case study undertaken by Horta e Costa et al. In 2019. And then the regulation data of the 3 distinct sources were standardized. And finally, the regulation-based classification system version 2.0 was applied. And therefore, a decision tree is followed to reach the classification for each MPA zone, because one MPA can consist out of several zones. And thereby, the number of fishing gear and the impact, and also aquaculture and bottom impact activities and recreational activities are taken into consideration. And the decision tree results in 7 final MPA zone classes, ranging from MPA zone class 1, which is no take, no go, to MPA zone class 7, unregulated extraction. And next, the MPA index can be calculated based on the area each zone class occupies in the MPA. And based on that MPA index value, the final MPA class can be determined, ranging from MPA class 1, fully protected, highly protected, moderately protected, weakly protected, to MPA class 5, which corresponds to unprotected. And a small number of classified MPAs were duplicated within the 3 distinct sources, which means they were present in the database and also in the survey, represented here by the red surface. And for the final dataset, the duplicate MPAs were chosen from the database. And also to understand potential differences of the duplicate protection levels, we compared them using Spearman rank correlations. And even though test results imply that there are differences in between the 3 distinct data sources, we have treated the datasets together. And the total 161 MPAs of the final dataset were assessed in their MPA area coverage across the OSPAR regions, the contracting parties, and also the OSPAR ocean zones. And let's have a look at the results now. This graph shows the protection level distribution of all OSPAR MPAs. And on the y-axis, we can see the number of MPAs. And on the x-axis, the protection level, ranging from MPA class 1, fully protected, to MPA class 5, unprotected. And a large number of MPAs could not be classified due to missing or inadequate data, and they are marked here as not classifiable. Fully protected areas are completely absent, and the majority of MPAs shows weakly to unprotected areas, and the average of the MPA class is 4.3, which corresponds to weakly and unprotected. When comparing the duplicate protection levels of the 3 distinct datasets, all 3 conducted Spearman rank tests show low correlation coefficients with 80, 30, and 50% chance for each test respectively that there is no correlation. And in this graph, we can see on the y-axis the MPA class assessed through the database, and on the x-axis through the survey or the Portuguese dataset. And the Portuguese dataset is also marked as Horta e Costa et al. And actually the 16 symbols represent the 16 duplicate MPA classes. And we can see that only 3 pairs of MPA classes show the same protection levels between the database and the survey. And if the different datasets would show all the same protection levels, they would be all points would be on that diagonal line here. Now let's have a look at the OSPAR MPA coverage across the regions. This tree map shows the area of the proportional area of the 5 OSPAR regions. And in yellow, the area covered by OSPAR MPAs, and in blue, not covered by OSPAR MPAs. And to illustrate actually the area of OSPAR MPAs, which could be classified, only the yellow areas of this plot are displayed in the tree map below, whereby the classifiable areas are represented in red and the not classifiable ones in dusty blue. And this graph on the right side shows the protection level coverage in percentage on the y-axis across the OSPAR regions on the x-axis. And the 5 protection levels are color-coded according to the legend. And noticeably, highly protected areas occur only in a tiny fraction in the Greater North Sea and in the Celtic Seas. And all remaining classifiable MPA coverage show primarily weakly and unprotected protection levels. Let's have a look now at the contracting party level. Similar to before, this tree map shows the size of the OSPAR MPA covered area, now for the maritime waters parties. And alike as before, this tree map gives an idea how much of that yellow area could be classified in our study, whereby red shows again the classified area. And this graph shows again the protection level coverage in percentage on the y-axis, but now across the contracting parties on the x-axis. And some contracting parties could not be classified at all. And the that graph shows everything for the classifiable area, so only the red part of that graph again. And highly protected areas occur only in French and UK waters, and remaining classifiable contracting party waters are also mostly weakly to unprotected. When having a look at the combined ocean zones, territorial waters show proportionally the largest area and also the largest classified area in proportion to its size. And regarding the actual protection levels across the ocean zone, territorial waters are the only ocean zone showing highly protected areas, and all classifiable remaining parts across the ocean zones are primarily covered with weakly and unprotected areas. And overall, 6.7% of the OSPAR MPA Maritime Area, of the OSPAR Maritime Area is covered by OSPAR MPAs, and 56% of that OSPAR MPA covered area could be classified in our study. And it's interesting here to note that 0.02% of that classifiable area is covered by highly protected areas. So firstly, as the OSPAR MPA network covers less than 10%, it does not achieve IG target 11. And scientific evidence suggests that fully to highly protected areas show the largest conservation outcome. But for all classified OSPAR MPAs, fully protected areas are missing or not present, and highly protected area occur only in a tiny fraction when considering the entire OSPAR Maritime Area. And the largest part is weakly to unprotected, considering the OSPAR MPA covered area. That implies for the network a potential ineffective protection. And in other regions of the world, similar weak protection levels were recently reported. For example, in the Mediterranean, only 0.23% of its total area is covered by fully and highly protected areas. And in Portuguese waters, only 0.3% of its coastal waters is covered by fully and highly protected areas. Across all analyzed levels, poor conservation outcome is likely to occur. And even though in some levels IG target 11 is technically achieved, the protection levels are mostly weak. Only successful and strictly regulated MPAs can enable effective protection. And our study demonstrates the need for more adequate regulations and also the importance to classify MPAs according to their protection levels. But regulations are often lacking, they are incomplete, they can be insufficient, and which is also the case for the OSPAR database, where 80% of MPAs lack regulations on the database. And similar trends were observed also in other regions of the world. For example, in the Mediterranean, only 2/3 of MPA lack restrictions on biodiversity impacting activities. And besides lacking regulations, also inconsistencies in reporting of regulation is described in literature, which we found to be the case in our study too. And even though of the small sample sizes, our test results suggest a potential lack of consistent reporting of regulation in place. And to identify these inconsistencies, further research would be needed. Scientific evidence suggests that fisheries and MPA management authorities need to work more interconnected with all involved stakeholders to overcome these issues. So overall, even though the OSPAR MPA network has made significant progress in the past years, contracting parties need to increase the amount of fully and highly protected areas in the network and also need to improve reporting of regulations on the database. And to conclude, this work highlights how proper and precise regulation, strengthened with accountability and transparency, are essential to manage human impact and encourage effective protection. Secondly, using MPA area cover as an indicator misrepresents the current protection in place. But contrary, when MPAs are classified according to the impact of their allowed uses, it can better inform about a potential MPA effect. And therefore, assessing MPAs by its protection levels can be a good indicator for MPA performance. These are some of my references. And thank you very much for listening. And thank you to my supervisors and everybody who has made this thesis possible. Thank you.